Hello and welcome to Arcadian. Today is all about fighting to the death. Combat is one of the hardest parts in D&D to grasp and also one of the biggest boogeyman that drives new players away from the game before even playing. All the dice, the math, the modifiers, spell slots. Well, I'm the first Arcadian and I'm here to demystify all that and tell you how easy it is to battle in D&D. Today we talk about the rules of combat. If you didn't watch my previous video, which if you're new to D&D, you really should just to make sure that you understand what I'm saying around here, you might recall that I described D&D as something of a narrative in a 3-act structure. Act 1, the DM describes the situation. Act 2, you announce what your character does in response to that. And Act 3, the DM narrates the consequences of your actions and the cycle repeats. Combat works pretty much the same way. However, since there are a lot of fighters engaging in the battle, we must organize everything so that everyone has their fair turn. That's why we start by rolling initiative. You've heard this sentence before, didn't you? Roll for initiative. What does it mean? It is basically to measure how fast your character reacts to the beginning of the combat. Everyone, including the enemies, will roll a d20 and add their dexterity modifier. The one with the highest total is the first character to react to the imminent fight, and as such is the first to move. Then comes the second, then the third, until the last one. When the fighter with the lowest initiative roll finishes their turn, we say that a round of combat has passed. Then we go back to the fighter with the highest initiative and a whole new round begins, where every fighter gets another turn. Now let's take a closer look into a turn. Yours, let's say. When it's not your turn, you see the battle unfold around you as everyone else takes their turns. When it gets to your turn, though, you get to act. However, the battle moves fast, so your character only has about 6 seconds of in-game time to do whatever you want them to do. In game terms, this means that you have time to move and take one action within your turn. But simply, in each turn, you get to move and do one thing. The moving part is simple. In your character sheet, you will find what your character's speed is. This normally depends on your race, and you can find more on how to calculate this on the character creation video, up there in the eye or down below in the Underdark. That number is how many feet your character can move in a single turn. So if your speed says 30, it means that you can move up to 30 feet during your turn. You can make this movement before or after you take your action, or both. You are allowed to split your movement however you want and, for example, move out of cover and then shoot an arrow at the enemy and then move back into cover. Up to you. The action part is where it gets tricky because an action can be lots of things. So if you're a new player, let me just put your mind at ease and tell you how simple it actually is. As simple as telling your DM what you want to do. Remember that you have a DM at the table. You can always tell them what you want to do, and the DM will just tell you what you have to roll to try to do that. They will probably convert what you want to do to one of the standard actions or outright improvise something just for you, because you do have the creative space in D&D to come up with your own actions, your own ideas on what to do, even if that isn't in the book, in the standardized actions that they present to you. But ultimately, you can always rely on the DM to help you out on these difficult bits. Remember the 3-act structure? You tell the DM what you want to do and the DM tells you what to roll? It is valid here as well. The only thing that you're kinda obliged to know is how your character works. What are their skills and powers? You will learn all of that when you're creating your character, and it's all explained very well in the book. So you should have no trouble learning this, and if you do, write your questions in the comments below, and I will do my best to answer everything. I only say this because if you tell your DM that you want to try and, for example, shoot fire at the enemies, and the DM asks back, "Oh, okay, can your character do that?" You shouldn't respond by saying, "Oh, I don't know. I didn't bother looking it up. I'll leave that work to you. Is my character able to shoot fire?" It's just polite to the DM. They have enough to worry already, aside from memorizing every possible character creation combination to know what you could and couldn't do. If you play D&D for a while though, you will start to notice that there are certain standard actions that the players usually use. The other players will say stuff like, I will attack, or I will dodge, I will hide, or even I will hold my action. These standardized actions quickly inform the DM and the other players of what you want to do because everyone already knows them and you will be expected to learn them as you play. But if memorizing all of this seems daunting, don't worry, because you, the rookie player, will probably only need to know a few of them, like attack or use a spell for your first session at least. But here's the deal. Ultimately, you will want to learn these actions. You, by yourself, will feel like you want to, because all that's going to do is give you more options for your strategy. And in the end, D&D battles are strategy games. Let's take a look at some of the actions just to give you a general idea of what are the possibilities to take within a D&D battle. Attack. That's the most basic action probably. If your character has a weapon, then they are able to attack as their action and use their pointy metal stick to hurt the bad guys. Depending on your class, you may even be able to strike more than once in a single attack action. Cast a spell. Pretty similar to the attack action, but this time with magic. Each spell has its own rules though, so reading the description should give you a pretty fair idea of what each spell does. Use a feature. This one doesn't come written down in the book, but several powers that you gain as you level up specifically tell you that you need to spend an action to use them. Pretty self-explanatory. Dodge. Instead of attacking, you try to dodge the enemy attacks, which makes it more difficult for them to hit you on their turn. Since you're using your action, which basically means your whole turn to dodge, meaning you can't use the same action to do anything else like attack, you are sacrificing some offense for defense, so this ends up being a tactical decision. Dash. You sacrifice the time you'd use to take your action to run. You get to move twice your speed this turn instead of only once. Disengage. In D&D, when you leave an enemy's weapon reach, he gets to attack you as you turn your back on them to try to run away. This is called an attack of opportunity. But by spending your action disengaging, you manage to safely maneuver away from them without leaving any openings to them, so you don't trigger any attacks of opportunity this turn. Now, there are more types of actions, but we don't need to go through all of them. That is not the point of this video. But if anything I said so far sounded complicated, I have good news for you. Any question that you might have, the DM and the other players really will probably be able to help you. And if you're a newbie, no one really expects you to know everything right from the beginning. There is this general understanding that we should nurture, we should care for the newbies that get to this game so they keep playing. But regardless, if you think about it, it's not that difficult. In your turn, you can move and do one thing. The movement is dictated by your speed, which you learn when you're creating the character, and the one thing you can do, or the action, can be pretty much anything. You just need to be sure that that thing is within the possibilities of your character, or else, worst case scenario, you might end up failing automatically. There's two other important things that we must mention, two important types of action, let's say, that happen often during combat, really. The first is a bonus action. This is a kind of secondary action that you can take besides your normal action, but only if you have a power or skill that says specifically you can do this as a bonus action. For example, if you're a rogue, you can try to hide yourself as a bonus action without spending your action to do it. This happens because at level 2, rogues gain a feature called Cunning Action, which lets them do this. Normally, you can't use the bonus action unless you have a particular feature or spell that says specifically you can use this as a bonus action. But there's one exception, one little tip I can give you if you want. If your character is wielding one weapon in each hand and they attack with one, they can take a bonus action afterwards to attack with the second one. This is what people usually call attacking with the offhand weapon. The other important thing is called a reaction, and this one's funny because it doesn't take place during your turn. It's something that you can use on other people's turns when the situation allows it. Sometimes you have powers or spells that say something like, when this and this happens, you can take a reaction to do this special stuff. So it's always something that is triggered, that you can only use once between your turns. When you spend your reaction, you can't have another one until you have your next turn, and only when you have a specific power that allows you to use the reaction, kind of like the bonus action. But there's also an exception to this, which I actually already mentioned. the attack of opportunity. If an enemy leaves a space within your weapon's reach, you can use your reaction to make a free attack against them. Everyone has this. Everyone can do this opportunity attack, even the enemy. So it's not a power that comes written down anywhere because everyone has access to it. So to sum it up, on your turn, you can move, you can do one thing, your action, and if you have a skill that allows it, you can also use a bonus action. When it's not your turn, but something triggers one of your features and powers or causes an opportunity attack, you can also take a reaction. During the game, this becomes intuitive and it's actually fairly simple. But I've been here talking about attacking and stuff, but I didn't talk about the most important stuff. How do you kill things? When you attack with a weapon or with many spells, first you need to know if you actually can hit the target or if the enemy defends or evades. To determine this, you roll. So you roll the dice and you had your relevant modifier. If you used a strength-based weapon, you use strength. If it was a ranged weapon, you use dexterity. This is all written down in the book next to each weapon. If during the character creation you gain proficiency with the weapon or spell that you're using, you also get to add your proficiency bonus. The total of all of this is called the attack roll. The stronger you are, or the better you are with your weapons, the higher the bonuses you'll get, so the higher you will roll. The attack roll must then be compared against the enemy's armor class, or AC. Every enemy has one, actually even you. It's a number that tells you how hard you are to hit, and it's one other thing that you can calculate in character creation, depending on the armor you buy. If your attack roll managed to match or surpass the enemy's AC, then you hit. Now it's time to see how strong you hit. After confirming your strike landed, the DM will ask you to roll damage. Each weapon has a specific damage die associated. For example, a dagger deals a d4 of damage, while a great axe deals a d12, which means that the stronger the weapon, the higher you might also be able to roll in damage. And you also add your ability modifier to the roll. This would be the ability that you use for attacking. For example, if you attack with a Warhammer, which is strength-based, you will roll your damage and add the strength modifier to the total. Then, the enemy's HP, or hit points, is reduced by the amount of damage that you rolled and the battle continues. Although, not all damage is done by direct attacks, right? If a tidal wave is cast by an enemy shaman and it hits you and your friends, the shaman is not trying to hit you specifically, right? She is basically throwing a cannonball and seeing what gets hit. In situations like this, rather than the attacker making an attack roll, the targets roll to see if they're escaping or not. This is called a saving throw. If you need to make one, the DM will specifically ask you to do it and walk you through the process, so it should be fairly simple. But I just wanted to make sure that you are familiar with the term in case it appears. And this is basically it. This was a really summarized version of how combat works in D&D. I left out intentionally tons of things because my goal here is not to tell you everything that might possibly happen in D&D, but just to tell you the basic gist of it. Because it's my belief that if you try D&D and you like the combat part, even if you didn't understand all of it in the beginning, you will, 1, have gained some experience, so you will be more familiar with it the next time, and 2, you will want to win, so you by yourself will feel like you need to gain more leverage on those pesky little monsters by learning more about what your character can do in combat or how to fight more efficiently. Much like we do nowadays when we search online for how to beat a specific part of a video game. We do that because we want to beat the video game. And even though it's kind of lecture-y, it's in our best interests. If you're really interested in D&D but the combat makes you feel uneasy, just remember that there are other people at the table that can help you make the transition as smooth as possible, guide you through the first steps, knowing that you'll be able to learn to walk on your own through exposure, repetition, and experience. But sometimes I talk and talk and talk and I end up confusing people. So just to give you a visual representation of everything we've discussed so far, I've made a video completely dedicated to show you how all of this works in a real game. I will show you step by step how initiative works, how to use actions and movements, how to roll for attacks, etc., with an actual example of a combat. So be sure to check that out. I'm the first Arcadian, I'm a Portuguese dungeon master, and I make videos and lots of other stuff about D&D all the time. So if you like this video, and you'd like to give me a little bit of XP to beat that awful ancient algorithm dragon, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share the video with your D&D friends. And since you're on a roll doing good deeds, why not give a look around my artist pages at The First Arcadian on Instagram and TikTok, at TFirstArcadian in Twitter. For the next video, I will be bringing out my miniatures, so I hope to see you there.